What's up, everybody? Phillip Enriquez here for the Say What You Like Sports podcast. And just when I felt like I got everything off of my chest after the 25-3 loss to the Washington football team, I got to come back for more because there's something that's still bothering me that I don't feel that I got this off my chest yet. So let me share it with you. You guys let me know how you feel about this play. But we're here to talk about Jon Bostic's illegal hit on Andy Dalton. I mean, I think it was 6:25 left in the third quarter. Andy Dalton drops back. I believe he was in the end zone, and he takes off. He sees, a path down the middle of the field. Takes off and runs, and he's ready to give himself up. He slides forward, and Jon Bostic, number 53 for the Washington football team, just lays a lick on Andy Dalton, basically taking his helmet off of his head for him. And, Andy Dalton was already giving himself up. And you could see some of the other Washington defenders kind of just like this. Just like, I can't believe my dude did that. I can't believe there was no need for that hit, And, the thing that's really gotten under my skin is the more and more I watch that play, and the more people are starting to talk. And then I'm looking at it like, yeah, you know what? That's something I didn't catch the first time around. And that's not one single Dallas Cowboys player, particularly the offensive lineman, stood up for their quarterback. Not a word was spoken to Jon Bostic. And when you look at that play on rewind, go ahead and look at the play. You're going to see Connor McGovern, you're going to see Terrence Steele, and you're going to see Connor Williams, all within arm's length of Jon Bostic, standing right over Andy Dalton after he just gave him that nasty hit. And not even a word was exchanged. Not even a shove. Not even get in the dude's face. Nobody's asking, to get into a big-time scuffle or a brawl. But hell, I would even expect some of that. But that's just sparking even more talk about just how much fight is really in this Dallas Cowboys team. Look, they didn't even want to stand up for their quarterback who took a terrible hit. They didn't do anything different than any player from the Washington football team. They just put their heads down and moved on. They just moved on. Hey, glad it wasn't me. When's the check? That's really the feeling that the Dallas Cowboys are starting to give everybody. And so earlier when I was doing my Cowboys Washington football team review, got to stay PC these days, I was really, really just putting the Jerry Jones feet to the fire, because everything that has gone wrong for this Dallas Cowboys squad in 2020 has gone wrong. You can start with the offensive line. You can blame the defensive line. You can blame McCarthy. You can blame Nolan. You can blame Zeke. You can blame a whole lot of things. Injuries. Everything that has gone wrong. You can blame the pandemic. I can go on and on. I can make a long freaking list for you guys. We all know what's went wrong for the Cowboys in 2020. But the only man that's in charge of everything is Jerry Jones. So I have to hold him accountable for everything. That's all we got. And when you see that there's no fight in this Dallas Cowboys team, you have to think, well, why is that? I mean, you're not really used to the Cowboys just straight quitting like they've looked the last couple of weeks. I think by now it's obvious that this Cowboys, at least on the defensive side of the ball, they are not feeling this coaching staff. They are not feeling this coaching staff at all. Now, you can blame the players, or you can blame the coaches. But instead of playing the blame game, let's try to fix this thing. Let's try to put this thing back together and see what it is that we got to do to improve this defense going forward. And right now, you can blame players, you can blame snitches, you can blame coaches. Nolan, has never been a defensive coordinator, a great defensive coordinator, in the last, 6-7 years. He was last coordinator for Atlanta, who I think ranked 31st in the league or something like that. Again, not a great resume, but he's Mike McCarthy's buddy. Mike McCarthy did him a favor and brought him in. So, look, this is the way we got to look at it. Who's in charge of signing the players and drafting the players? Who has his hand in that? Jerry Jones. Even before McCarthy and before Nolan, who had their hands in getting these players signed, drafted? That's Jerry Jones. Now, again, he's not the main man. He's not the guy doing everything, but he's supposed to have his finger on the pulse as GM. He's got his man, Will McClay, but he's there putting his input and signing his signature to every move that's being made for the Dallas Cowboys. That's personnel. The GM should have final say on all personnel. So if you have a problem with the players, guess what? You have a problem with Jerry Jones too. Now, who hires the coaches? If you don't like Nolan and you don't like McCarthy, or if you just don't think it's a good fit, which is kind of where I'm at right now. I don't think McCarthy was a good fit. I don't think Nolan was a good fit for these players. But it is what it is now in 2020. We are where we are. But who's in charge of ensuring that it's a good fit? Who was in charge of that sleepover at Jerry Jones's house when Mike McCarthy got hired? And I don't think they interviewed anybody other than Marvin Lewis before Mike McCarthy. And I think that was just to pretty much say, hey, yeah, you know what? We complied with the Rooney Rule. We interviewed somebody that was of African American descent, or I don't know if it's that, or minority for the job, I think. And then they hired McCarthy in a sleepover, no less. So that's whose fault? Is that Mike McCarthy's fault for lying and taking the job, making himself look good? No. Is it Mike McCarthy's fault? You know, he hired his buddy. That's what most coaches do. No. It's Jerry Jones. Jerry Jones knew the players he had on this roster. He's had a hand in drafting them. He has a hand in signing them. He's in charge of his personnel, and he's in charge of his coaching staff. And guess what? They do not mesh. They do not even get along. I mean, they're throwing each other under the bus in front of the media now. It's getting bad. Mike McCarthy, after the game, getting back to this Jon Bostic illegal hit on Dalton, they asked him, the reporters asked Mike McCarthy what he thought about the hit, and basically he says, that's something that we talk about all the time, playing for one another, and that reaction is not what I would expect. So he's saying, you know, these players have no balls. These Dallas Cowboys offensive linemen did not stand up for their quarterback, Andy Dalton, after such a blatant illegal hit, dirty hit like that. Come on, guys. They are not fighting for one another. They are not believing in one another. There's just, I don't know what to say. And then, you know, that brings you just back to, well, who's in charge of it all? Jerry Jones, right? Jerry Jones had his hand in all of this. Jerry Jones has created the country club atmosphere in Dallas that allows these players to be spoiled, or just, I don't know how you want to describe them, but I mean spoiled players that know that Jerry has an open door policy and they can just bypass the head coach. Nothing's going to change with this McCarthy to Garrett. It's been the same story with the exception of probably Bill Parcells, who for the most part until the last season got his way over Jerry's way. And Jerry has even admitted in public the only reason that he stood with Parcells that long was because he needed to build the damn AT&T Stadium. So he needed a guy that was in charge. And I think aside from that, this is Jerry's football team. This is what a Jerry Jones GM football team is always going to look like. There's always going to be, you know, just issues like these. The head coach is basically just a lightning rod to take the hits for Jerry Jones. You know, that's what Garrett did for 10. He was just the punching bag for Jerry Jones. Everybody was always ready to throw Garrett under the bus. And look, I don't think Garrett was the greatest coach at all. I'm not making any excuses for Garrett. But he did what his job was supposed to be, and that was, you know, he was the lightning rod for all his fans. Get rid of Garrett. It's the carrot. It's Coach Clapper. It's this, it's that. It's Jerry Jones. It has been for a long time before Garrett, and it still is even after Garrett. It's no different with McCarthy. He hired Mike McCarthy because Jerry Jones knew Mike McCarthy would respect Jerry Jones enough to not overstep his boundaries. He's not going to tell the GM, hey man, I got this decision. This is a decision that I need to make. I'm cutting this player. I don't care what you think. He's not going to do that. He's always going to say, is that okay, Jerry? Is that okay, Jerry? That's what Jerry Jones wants, final say. It's his team. Who can blame him? But Cowboys fans, we got to come to a realization that this is the way that it's going to be. You know, this Jon Bostic hit on Dalton shows you this is the way it's going to be. You know, the coaches don't believe in the players don't believe in the coaches. I think Nolan threw the defensive players under the bus earlier in the week. He said something like, yeah, we're running high school plays. They shouldn't be that difficult for them. So the cat is out of the bag. This thing in Dallas is about to implode. This is not our finest hour. I don't know what we got to do in the future as far as making any coaching changes, any personnel changes, but I just think one thing's for sure. Jerry Jones needs to take some accountability, and changes will have to be made if the Cowboys are going to compete in 2020 or hell, even 2021.